Students cheating in exams is old hat. These days, we adults enable our children to deceive themselves. Call it trickery, fraud, falsehood, or plain cheating, we betray ourselves in the process. I'm talking about our school results. If you were an innocent soul taking in India's class 10 results at face value, you would be amazed at the massive intellectual improvement of Indian school children over the last 5 decades or so. From about 30% pass in class 10 in the early 1970s, many Indian states are now clocking near 100% pass in class 10 exams. Just look at some of the class 10 results of different states. In May this year, the Punjab School Education Board announced class 10 results with a 99.93% pass. In June, the Odisha Board of School Education announced its class 10 results, showing a 97.89% pass. And last week, the Kerala Secondary School Leaving Certificate Examination results were announced with a 99.47% pass. In Kerala, the number of students who got an A+ in every subject shot up from 41,906 last year to 121,318 this year, or a stunning 29% of all students who wrote the exam ended up getting an A+ in all subjects. What? Has India just raised a generation of absolutely brilliant girls and boys? Dig a little bit and you know the truth is far from it. In fact, given the loss of classes, the state government had given the students focus areas from where they could expect questions. And on top of that, for subjects with 40 marks, they were given questions for 80 marks. So they could answer all the questions and easily score 100% in every subject. Not even many parents were aware of how their children became so smart overnight. To understand how deeply we have deceived our children, I met 4 students in Kottayam district who got A+ for all subjects. Now remember, Kottayam is the first town in India which became fully literate 32 years ago in 1989. Now 4 students out of 400,000 is no sample size to talk of, but still, I picked 2 boys and 2 girls. My first question, can you multiply 251 by 2 without pen and paper if I give you sufficient time? 2 could, 2 couldn't. But what was sad was that the 2 who got it wrong were prompted by parents who murmured the answers from behind, and yet they couldn't get it right. Now such behavior from parents do not surprise us anymore because we saw parents a few years ago in Bihar scaling school walls to help their children cheat in exams. Question 2. India had 1 woman Prime Minister. Have you heard of her? 3 had heard, 1 hadn't. Question 3. What is photosynthesis? They all muttered plants, leaves, something to do with sunlight, roots, water, without being able to say what. Question 4. Can you spot Delhi on a map of India? Only 1 could. 2 of them thought Delhi was somewhere in the south, and 1 thought it was way up north, somewhere in Jammu and Kashmir. And question 5. You have just cleared the SSLC examination. What does the acronym SSLC stand for? Nobody could answer that. To round off and to assess their knowledge of what is happening around their classrooms while they were in class 10, I asked if any of their class teachers had mentioned in class about the farmers' agitation in the country. And they all said no teacher had mentioned that. But had they heard of it themselves? Only 1 boy had. So there you have the state of Indian school education as it stands this week. Totally textbook centric, completely marks and grades oriented, and oblivious to everything around. It was so difficult to fail in class 10 exams in Kerala this year that there were marketing offers for those who actually managed to fail. K. Sudesh, who runs the Hammock Homestay in Kodaikanal, has offered free stays for whoever has failed in this year's Kerala class 10 examinations. And at Mulanturuthi in Kerala, restaurateur A.B. Paul is offering free kurimanthi, chicken and rice Arabic dish, which is a craze in Kerala now, to those who have failed in class 10 exams. Given the cryptic nature of Keralites, there were also trolls galore about this year's class 10 exams, in which everybody could pass. One of them went, a better result this time than when kids went to school. Should schools reopen at all? Another one went, teachers are a total failure. When they taught in school, 41,906 A pluses. When children sat at home, 121,318 A pluses. Trolls aside, it was also a pertinent coincidence that the Unified District Information Systems for Education Plus, or the UDISE Plus report, was also released last week. There were a few bright spots, like the number of students in the pre-primary to secondary school going up to 264.5 million in 2019-20, higher by some 4.23 million from the previous year. It was also heartening to see that the enrollment of girls had increased at all levels. But there are other areas of concern. For example, 78% of Indian schools do not have internet connection. And 61% of schools do not have computers. And we're talking about online learning and blended learning all the time. Also, 84% of schools have designated library or reading rooms, but only 69% of them have books in their libraries. Figure that out. Can you technically call a room without books a library? I asked Tony Thomas, Chief Digital and Information Officer of Amsterdam-based Dutch multinational Signify, about the need for our school education to be oriented towards the changing technological landscape.
The exponential change of technology is really going to make a huge impact to what the industry needs and what the kind of jobs will be. Anything that can be automated will be automated. So most of the jobs will be for people who can actually think, comprehend. The cognitive abilities will be much more in vogue than any of the mechanical capabilities.
IAS officer turned entrepreneur, investor and author C. Balagopal feels that our school education system is deeply entrenched in producing standardized output for the factory system.
The modern school system and the higher education system evolved in response to the needs of the factory system that emerged from the Industrial Revolution about 200 years ago. And the drivers of that education system were mass production, standardization, measurement, and above all, predictable outcomes. What is taught today has very little relationship with the world as it is emerging.
It was American economist Robert A. Musgrave who coined the term merit goods for goods like education, in which benefits are not seen immediately on consumption but much later. No society or nation can afford to ignore investment in merit goods like education, which will determine our very future. At the moment, we're sitting atop an absolutely mouth-watering human resource asset. 1.5 million schools, 9.7 million teachers, and 265 million students. A bigger human wealth than any other nations. To squander that enormous human resource wealth by deceiving our students and by giving them false grades and marks is a crime against ourselves. Because just as for individuals, education is the best passport even for nations to a bright future. This video is dedicated to Rakesh Babu, a young man from Cherthala, Kerala, who instead of cursing the rising fuel price, has been able to design and create an electric scooter all by himself. Last year, he had made a mini Volkswagen Beetle. Ask ourselves whether our school education is designed to nurture geniuses like him. Thank you.